Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. So, in this episode, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Alex Myers. Alex is a self proclaimed armchair futurist and is well versed in Web3 philosophy, cryptocurrency, and I would say technology in general. Alex, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just dive in. Let's do a quick intro on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so right now I'm kind of in between roles. Prior to this, I was the head of people operations over at Aragon, which is they basically make a protocol for decentralized organizations that don't have any jurisdiction. So it basically allows people to crowdfund resources to build projects without having to get a business license, or if there's government restrictions on starting businesses, then DAOs are an interesting use case that I think are going to be important for the future as the world changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Armchair Futurist. I'm very curious. What is that all about? And what does that mean?
So I noticed a few years back, well, about 15 years now. I mean, I have I've always liked science fiction, but I never thought of a way to apply it um, to anything in my professional life. Um, and I decided to get a futurist certification. They have these. Basically, it's looking at trends, statistics, demographic data, technology trends on the economy, and trying to anticipate things that are going to happen next. So it's a mix. It's a mix of speculation about what's going to happen, but it's always tethered to something that's occurring economically now, or something that's already in place. So that's been an interesting journey for me. So I've consulted a few times on it. It's not a heavy aspect of what I do in my professional life. I would love to be more, um, but I'm not as good at marketing as you, Ryan.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I have a lot to learn, that's for sure. One thing I enjoyed in our conversation when we met up for the first time is you're big on Web3. Now, I feel like Web3 it just kind of died off from the media with the whole NFT and all that stuff that was going on. Talk about Web3, but what's your perspective on Web3?
Web3, just like any financial paradigm, at least a financial paradigm adjacent to technology, goes in cycles when it first starts out. So right now we're at the beginning of a new liquidity cycle for from a global macroeconomic sense. So as a result, there's more liquidity in the system, which means speculative assets like crypto goes up. Whenever that goes up, you will start hearing more about it. So I guarantee you in the next 3 to 4 months, you will hear a lot more about Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all the ETFs related to that as far as the investment side for traditional investors, not people who have wallets or anything like that. But Web3 as a concept is Chris Dixon is a great writer on this. He just came out with a book called Read, Write, Own. And basically, he talks about there was a concept of the internet around the 90s when it first started to evolve, when people had their own web servers. It was basically decentralized in the sense that people could find their own communities and kind of stay there. Right now, we're just bombarded with stimulus from all these different networks all the time, which is, of course, increasing anxiety, depression, and all these things, the things we associate with social media. And there's a marketing angle to this in a second. But Web3 is basically opt. It's opting out of something versus opting into something versus opting out. So when you go to a site on Web2, which is anything on the traditional internet that doesn't require a wallet interface, a digital wallet on your browser or whatever. Um, the difference is that you have to basically accept all the cookies, and most people just passively
Click
just click that.
allow. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, they're fine with it. It's just like the terms of service from Apple, any of these things. Like people just want to get to the entertainment, right? Um, and so Web3 is the opposite of that. It actually incentivizes you for giving out parts of your data. That's the dream. So would you let a marketer pay for your data in cryptocurrency so that they could use some of your online reputation or health data or anything that you want to store on a blockchain?
Absolutely.
Um,
Instead of the current alternative, which is you give your data away for free.
Yes, it's a completely different mental model. And that's when people start to understand that, they see it outside of just this financial thing with crypto bros and Lamborghinis and all these things. And they actually see like, holy moly, like this is a completely different way to think about my reputation, my incentives, how marketing is handled, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, on that similar topic, I guess, what are your thoughts on just where do you think privacy laws are going in the immediate future, 5 years from now? I mean, what do you see happening there?
Well, especially as it relates to AI, which is the tools you and I, of course, use every day in different forms, um, especially with things like intellectual property. I think specifically that most of the time frame for which you can have intellectual property for an idea is not only more and more going to be assisted by AI. You know, they always say the singularity of AI is like when the last human invention happens. So intellectual property is going to be a big one as far as the music industry, anything people want to invent, an idea they have. I think they're going to need to shorten those because there's going to be so much new ideas being created at such a rapid rate that a company, no matter how much money they have, asking for a 15-year IP hold on anything that uses a brand name or an image, I think that's going to be in complete disarray. And obviously, most people know that the regulation has not been able to catch up with the speed of technological change.
Not even
Um,
close. I mean, I always
yeah,
tell people, I get asked that question all the time when I speak about AI and like, what about the laws? What about regulation? I'm like, here's the deal, guys. These lawmakers, they don't even know how to turn on computer. They haven't regulated the internet. So based on that, do you think they're regulating AI? And everyone's like, oh yeah, I never really thought of that.
yeah, and there's too much incentive for world governments, for businesses, for anybody to increase the technology. So I think it's a horrible argument that we should just slow it down because for one, it's impossible. The financial incentives are already too strong. And
And you
so
can't stop
regulate,
it either. Yeah, no
yeah,
matter what laws
yeah,
you place, you still can't stop it.
yeah, and enforcing those laws is going to continue to be an even bigger challenge. You can't just hire more people, and more IRS agents or more people who check for IP theft, and expect that to solve the problem. So it's going to be an interesting shift in how that's
Do,
handled.
do you know, and I may need to look into this for more research. Do you know if like OpenAI has watermarks or takes credit for DALI 3 images or text or like, what are your thoughts on that? Do some of these AI image generators have hidden watermarks where they have IP on these images?
Um, I don't know enough about that as far as what OpenAI is trying to do. What I do think is interesting is where OpenAI is going next. So right now, their primary focus has always been LLMs, but they just came out with a press release where they said that it's basically that they're going to start doing automations on your phone. So basically, it's going to be a proactive large language model. So right now, if you want to know something, you do the QA session with a chatbot, right? And so that's you doing it. But what happens if it has access to your device, whether it's a laptop or a phone or what have you, and it knows your schedule, it knows your preferences, it knows everything about you? Think about the advertising model potential for this. Think about the marketing model
Well, how is
because
it any
everybody's
different than Amazon Alexa or Siri? I mean, how is it any different than that?
device access and machine learning. The kind of machine learning we're talking about is basically it's more user focused. So under the umbrella of making your life easier, like what OpenAI is coming out with next is essentially we've always talked about how we want 4-day work weeks, we want technology to make our lives easier, so we don't have to work as much. Like this is actually something that is trying to get right at that space. So imagine it proactively cleans up your email based on its conversations with you, deleting thousands of unread messages, organizing things into folders, or proactively, again, proactive is the key word, follows up with your friends and family, sending them personalized messages and invitations that sound exactly like you or read exactly like you, because it'll know all that stuff. It proactively books vacations for you based on your budget, finding the best deals, and it provides recommendations once you're actually on the ground. And then it helps you determine optimal paths for personal growth, improvement, based off the stuff you're paying attention to on your phone. And so, I think people, if they understand the capacity of this, of technology like this, so taking an LLM and then basically doing robotic process automation automatically on your device to basically make streamline everything you could do on the devices you use every day through probability, just understanding what you're going to do, what you're thinking about doing, and things you're trying to organize and sift through. It's going to help you with all of that proactively. So
That
it's not going to
sound
be,
yeah, that sounds amazing for sure, but then it
yeah,
comes back to the privacy issue. Do you want OpenAI knowing everything going on in your emails and your phone? I mean, that it all circles back.
yeah, and that's, it always goes back to that Benjamin Franklin quote, something about, if you're willing to give up liberty for a little bit of safety, you deserve neither of those.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is we're already cyborgs in a way. We're constantly attached to these devices. So
By
the
design
genie's
too.
out of the bottle. Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle a little bit. The question is centralization versus decentralization. Now, when I say decentralization, I'm not even talking about the blockchain. I'm talking about um, would you rather have, I know my answer, would you rather have one central artificial intelligence that is a superpower that's controlled by some world government or by one particular mega corporation?
That's a big no
Uh,
from me.
right. Or would you rather have hundreds and thousands, millions of specialized AIs for different kinds of use cases that anybody can leverage at any time and that are delegated or, sorry, governed by different groups of people who specialize in those areas? So if you're doing biotech research on protein folding, you probably want specialized scientists to govern how that AI is handles its weights and what it's optimizing for based on the use case. Again, this is where it needs to come down to is decentralizing and specializing people who govern these technologies. If it's one central authority, who knows what's possible, right? They wouldn't only become the most, um, uh, they would have the most money of any company in the world ever.
Yeah, that sounds
Um,
ideal for sure, and I completely agree. I'm on your side there, but it's like, what's the incentive of these bureaucrats and these world leaders to ever go into that portion? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how realistic that is because we look at society today; it's controlled by very few: Vanguard, BlackRock, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how likely that is just based on past history, but I agree with you. I'm all in for that idea.
yeah, and again, there's primitives coming about. They still have to work out, um, how to handle computation in parallel with all these GPUs that are running LLMs today. Like, how do you apply that same technology to blockchains that basically allow management by thousands of people of a particular AI, right? Whatever it's specialized in. They're starting to develop that now, but we need to ramp that up quickly um, because that would create a different path for people that has different incentives, but uses the same technology that we know and love, but it wouldn't be centralized. Um, Open source is a piece of that, but saying if something's open source doesn't necessarily mean that there won't also still be one AI to rule them all, which is the biggest concern. So open source is great, but it also has to be more decentralized than it is today, which is what you probably know this, Ryan, 3 or 4 companies right now, right?
Yeah,
Um,
somewhere around there. It's not a lot.
mhm.
So let's transition a little bit. You talked about in your podcast forum, misinformation for profit was your quote that you want to discuss. What are your thoughts about this whole term around misinformation for profit and how do we stop this?
It's it's a tough one because a lot of the marketing tactics, as you know, um, and this is where it gets into ethics as well, is they're designed to grab attention, and usually in the parts of the brain that are, let's just say they're not the smartest parts of your brain. It's emotional. So the stuff that gets uploaded the most on Instagram or Twitter, if somebody's saying something, it's usually highly rhetorical, um, highly emotionally engaging, right? And so stuff like community notes on Twitter is beginning to help inform people about, hey, this might be propaganda, or hey, this isn't actually true based off of this other information. This could be a conspiracy theory, or take your pick. So the challenge is real because the reality is that I don't know about you, but most of the people I know, they are anxious with how much information. The problem is we never knew how to evolve with having access to this much information all the time. We simply haven't evolved because this technology is exponential. Our evolution is linear. So the challenge I see with these attention grabbing tactics is how do you reduce the amplification emotionally charged content? And marketing is an interesting angle for this because I don't know what the answer is. I'm curious what you think, Brian. Like
Well, I think my
how do
head
you
goes
still
to
make money in
censorship.
marketing? But yeah,
My head goes to censorship. I mean, all that's great, but like I know X and Elon Musk are saying they don't. I mean, they still have to censor some things, regardless of what they say. There's always going to be censorship to some extent. So when you mention those community notes, my head goes to, well, who's managing those community notes? Can we trust the people managing community notes? Like, I don't trust anyone on the internet. I don't trust any authority, to be completely honest with you. So I don't know. It's really a double-edged sword, in my opinion.
it is. And again, the more information that we freely give up in the current systems that we use in the Web 2 systems, the more information that is incentivized to be used. So the example I gave about proactive LLMs inside your device, right? Most people would pay a lot of money for this, but would you pay $100 a month for something like that that makes your whole life easier? Um, that was ad free, that didn't have any ads or marketing, or would you get it for free, which is most people because they can't afford $100 a month for a service, right? Most people can't even afford the $20 a month for OpenAI and some of these others. So that's where it gets very tricky because if you have a marketing engine that knows all of your preferences, then marketing will change. It's not just, oh, what's the probability of this one particular ad on this particular application that's going to turn into a sale for this company, versus they are constantly bombarded by that same probability everywhere for the right amount. So the marketer is willing to spend 10x more on marketing to this demographic if they know they have a higher probability of success, right? You see this every day. This is the stuff you work on. So how are you increasing the probability that someone's going to click through something to eventually get to something they purchase in the marketplace, whether it's a service or a product, anything? And so if something's inside your phone and it knows everything about you and it's trying to make your life easier, but you need a free version of that, the middle of that is marketing. The middle of that is advertising. Um, and that's what's scary because
Yeah, I think what's
it's
very scary is you look at how many business models on the internet right now are based off the misinformation for profit. I mean, we could go down the line of all these journalists and all these publications that literally thrive off misinformation for profit. That's how they make ends meet is misinformation through clickbait titles, clickbait content, et cetera, on social media. I'm an affiliate marketing, so there's a lot of misinformation for profit in affiliate marketing. Trust me when I say that. So I don't know. I think it's easier said than done to, I guess, get out of the information or misinformation is for profit mentality. In an ideal world, yeah, I would love that, but I just don't think that's a reality, unfortunately.
yeah, and I mean you can't just tell people, hey, you should improve your critical thinking skills. If everybody has the attention span of a gnat, um, how are you how could we expect anybody to improve their critical thinking so that they're not manipulated by marketing as much?
Well, also look
Um,
at from where we're started from the beginning, from elementary up until college. I mean, there's really no critical thinking taught. At least when I started through elementary through college, there's no critical thinking. It's all memorization, reputation, show up, sit down, shut up, go to work,
yeah.
9 to 5. You know what I mean? It's all taught at a very young age.
Yeah, and I mean now it's gotten so out of hand, which is a whole nother topic, but this does impact critical thinking. You have, the woke movement on one side, and then you have conspiracy theorists and propagandists. So there's definitely challenges in education, but that's a separate topic. But
Yeah,
the critical
absolutely.
thinking versus manipulation, it's not easy to simply say, oh, we're gonna start equipping individuals with critical thinking skills. There's plenty of private schools going to this Socratic method where there's a lot of one-on-one tutoring, a lot of QA and back and forth. It's not just somebody standing up teaching something and lecturing based off a book that no one's going to read. They're going to ask an LLM about that book, and that's how they're going to learn.
Yeah,
So.
Spark Notes is irrelevant now.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of places, a lot of stuff is irrelevant now. because people are just using LLMs for more and more things. Of course, from a marketing standpoint, you're going to have to think about this, because where are they going to place marketing when more and more people are using LLMs as basically their tool for everything? How are you trying to get them to actually visit sites, traditional websites? And
Yeah, I
so
just I
we're
just had
starting
an
to see that now.
SEO guy on yesterday actually. We talked about Google SGE. We talked about more people using Chat GPT and these LLMs for search intent. So he was talking about, well, are they going to monetize that through ads somehow for these high intent, high traffic searches? Like it was a really intriguing conversation. I'm really interested as I publish that one to see what response I get.
Yeah, do you think, Ryan, that OpenAI and others will have an advertising model where basically saying, just like every other service, right? Like you pay a premium to not get ads, whether it's streaming or social media, right?
I
Do
think
you
it's
see that
hard to
happening?
say. I think they're making so much money right now through their AP, not only the subscription, but also think about the API hits. Every AI
Mhm,
SaaS tool that's using GPT-4 or one of their language models, they're making money every time that's hit, which is in the millions and
mhm,
billions probably, right? So they're making a lot
mhm.
of money with this business model already. And I also wonder too, as Microsoft gave them millions and billions of dollars as an investment, there might be something in that contract there where they can't have search ads when people are searching on their Chat GPT interface. I don't know. I really don't know, Alex.
Mhm. Yeah, I think advertising is coming to large language models because there's going to be this transitionary phase where, and even by default, the Chrome browser is going to start, I think it's in the next few months. Anytime you search for anything on regular Google, you're going to get at the very top an automated Gemini-based response, which is their large language model, right? And so this transitionary phase where more people are going to use LLMs for everyday queries, versus the places where all that data is actually stored, where it's referenced in its original form, there's going to be a huge marketing shift for that. And I
Yeah,
do think
I
the
agree.
incentives are very strong monetarily for OpenAI and others to engage with that. I hope they don't, but the incentive could not be stronger. Because if you get a
SEOs are
free
probably
service,
shaking if they hear you say something like that because that's another whole SEO is dying, SEO is dead argument.
we're going to have to start thinking about that. There's a lot of paradigm shifts we're going to have to start talking honestly about. I just wrote an article the other day about brain computer interfaces. Not so much that I'm going to be an early adopter, just that we need to start thinking about what it's going to be like if something that's 1,000 times more intelligent than us, is also completely separate from us. Um, like, are we going to, what's the incentive for an intelligence that strong to keep us around? We're very wasteful. We can only remember, four plus or minus two things in our working memory. Like we have all these limitations. We're vengeful, we're xenophobic, right? So like we have to start having very tricky conversations, not just in marketing, but in philosophy and ethics, so that we can, you know, hopefully hone in what we actually want, from these technologies, long
Absolutely.
term.
And
You know,
politicians still need votes. I mean, that's the elephant in the room right there. I don't want to dive into that rabbit hole, but let's transition right now, Alex. I want to talk about marketing quacks. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all. What are some marketing tricks and gimmicks that you've seen people do?
oh boy. So I think the main one, what's been coming up for me lately, is somebody's trying to sell a product or service. This is on LinkedIn specifically, and there'll be this video about kittens like playing with some other very cute animal, and or somebody helping somebody else in need. And so they're pulling at your heartstrings. And then if you look at the actual thing that they're saying, it's buying an insurance policy, right? And so it's not even related, to what they're actually selling. It's just clickbait.
I think
Because
Budweiser's notorious for this.
yeah, yeah, it's again, it's like if you're using up all your dopamine or all of your oxytocin to feel a certain way, you're going to interpret what comes next a little bit differently. You're gonna be like, oh, they're even associated with that nice feeling I had, that authentic feeling that I just had. It's going to make it more attractive. So that's one interesting angle that I see is like this bait and switch of a highly emotional thing, that sells a product that's completely unrelated to it. So that's one. Um, as far as a few as far as a few others, it's really just people who reach out for any given thing. I don't. I'm sure you get plenty of spam as well. But as far as marketing, people reaching out and trying to sell different things, that's got to be a hard job, right? I empathize.
Cold outreach, absolutely.
Yeah, cold outreach people. Um, so that's going to be a tricky thing as well. I can't think of any at the top of my head. I'm curious what you've seen.
Well, I think AI is going
That's
to actually start replacing cold outreach people, not only through LinkedIn DMs, email, but also AI phone. I mean, there's a lot of AI voice generators out there that sound extremely real, and you can also throw in a data set to where it has a data set to work from. We already see this in a lot of tech companies. I know MediaCom has full automation now, and people call in customer support. So I think
mhm.
cold outreach is actually going to be fully automated here at some point soon.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be nice if those automated call scripts got injected with LLMs and were easier to use, so you're not on the phone forever, so they can handle more kinds of things. Um,
Yeah.
that would be useful, but also scary.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. My biggest quack, I won't dive into it, but my biggest quack and the reason that I actually started this podcast is that my business partner and I, Daniel Lynch, we always talk about the fake people on the internet. All these people that buy subscribers, buy followers, they spin up a nice ClickFunnels landing page and they sell a course for $1,000 or they sell a mastermind and they have this fake social proof where they have 1 million followers and they took a picture with Grant Cardone, but guess what? They paid for that picture with Grant Cardone. And the average person has no idea. They don't know how any of this stuff works, or they pay into Forbes Business Advisor, or they pay a digital PR consultant to get them into all these fake placements, right? Like
Mhm.
these are the biggest quacks that just like was inspired me and just a burning passion of mine to like start this podcast, just expose all these people, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how impressionable people are, how gullible people are. And I'm no different. I mean, I've literally been scammed by um, thinking that Elon Musk, this is no joke, that Elon Musk was like giving away some of his cryptocurrency. Just click this link and connect it to your wallet, and you'll get, you know, as long as you have stock in Tesla,
Like
then
an
you,
airdrop situation.
yeah, an airdrop situation, exactly. And yeah, I think it basically says if you give us part of it, we'll give you twice the amount back. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a great deal. And I was duped into this. And my wife is constantly doing that too. She's like, is this real? Like, is this a thing that I should look at or invest my time in or even invest my money in? And so most people, again, this goes back to critical thinking. They're not looking at some of the signs. Like, check all the links. If you go to a site and about us, like there's common links at the header and the footer of these sites, right? If only half of them work, or they don't go anywhere, or it just goes right back to and it reroutes to the same page, that's probably a red flag. But think about older generations. None of them are doing this. None of them are doing any of those things.
I think of
Um,
deep fakes too, Alex. I mean, we didn't get to talk about deep fakes, but that is a whole other level of people who lack critical thinking. If they see a deep fake image of a politician or Elon Musk or someone on
mhm.
social media and it goes viral, oh my God, do you see what he said? And they share it, it just spreads like wildfire. I think that's a very dangerous threat to society.
Yeah, and again, there's different solutions that again in the block space you're trying to do this with things like zero knowledge proofs, where you can prove that something came from the original source without actually having either party know that it's validated. It's just like a cryptographic proof where neither side knows that it's what the data is. They just know that it's been verified. And so the problem is like where these sources are coming from, and are they willing to uh, pay money to actually validate that information? Because going to be the biggest problem is deepfakes, and the technology is nowhere near scaled up enough yet. There's
No.
companies that are working on it, but big companies aren't buying into this yet because they don't have that incentive yet.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
So Alex, let's again thank you for your time for joining the
yeah.
show. Any final notes that you have on just marketing advice, ethics advice? I mean, anything that we really talked about here for anyone listening.
I would say my big thing is be around people who disagree with you. If you're concerned that you're being influenced too much by marketing, do the opposite of that. Get out and touch grass and interact with people who you appreciate and respect. And hopefully you have that kind of community. And just spitball those things that you're seeing off of them. Because most of the time You're not. It's not about pushback. You're just going to be like, oh, I never thought of that perspective. Maybe I shouldn't think this is a real thing, or maybe I shouldn't be so worried. Talk with people. That always helps. We have to stay connected authentically. Otherwise, these algorithms are going to take over,
Yeah,
and
I
and
mean
that's
that's
not good.
that's all selling point for this podcast too. A guy I follow, Naval Ravikant, he's quoted by saying, "Groups search for consensus, individuals search for truth." And I always
Mhm.
think about that, and that applies to exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and again, it's hard to do this, right? It's hard to put yourself out there when it's easier just to dunk on somebody or be a troll. That's much easier to do. No cost. There's no cost to that. No reputational cost. No nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have an
So
interaction with somebody. Yeah, that changes things.
I agree 100%. So where can people find you online to learn more?
Oh, they can find me at Armchair Futurist on Twitter. I also write quite a bit on LinkedIn. They could just look up my name, and I'm in Des Moines, so they can find me there. And I tend to write about technology, and I speculate on where I think it's going. So that'd probably be the best place to see how my brain is being used online.
Perfect. I'll have to give you a follow right after this show. And I, from our first conversation, I know we had a great conversation on sci-fi, future of tech, crypto. So I always enjoy these types of conversations.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Yeah. So thanks again for coming on, Alex, and thanks again to everyone listening to this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again to the next episode.